Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Meet the Investor podcast. This is ARTEEN ZAHIRI and I'm the co-host of this feature along with RUMEER KESHWANI. Today we are interviewing Sergio Paluch, founding partner at BetaBoom. BetaBoom invests in pre-seed startups building the future for women in the U.S. rising majority, Black, Latinx, Asian, and Middle Eastern customers. The firm looks for and invests in under-the-radar founders and helps them grow their startup with daily coaching and support for marketing and product experts.
So BetaBoom is a pre-seed fund investing in software companies that are building the future for women and ethnic minorities in the US. And, so women and ethnic minorities have been the driving force of the US economy for the past, I think, 2 decades, if not more. And, we expect that to continue for many decades to come. So that's who we're focusing on investing in.
Great. And it would be helpful also maybe taking a step back, what exactly maybe you could talk a bit about your background. What part of your experience or upbringing led you to, seek out a venture like this, become the managing partner? What kind of brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, I think the journey was very unexpected. I don't think I took the traditional path to where I am right now. And to be honest, and even in college, I would have never in a million years thought that I would be doing this. Really, I think the seeds for doing BetaBoom started when I was just 8 years old, when I immigrated to the US. I immigrated to, the lowest income community around the Boston area. It was really, really tough. It was, there was rampant gang warfare. It was, from what I understand, the heroin importing capital of the East Coast. So there was just massive gang warfare and massive poverty. And, what I realized throughout my life was that, I was able to go to a really good college, definitely through a lot of hard work, but also a lot of luck, to be honest. And what I realized was that a lot of people that I grew up with, not only in Chelsea where we landed, but also in other communities where we lived subsequently, I realized that a lot of the folks that I grew up with were smarter than I was, were more driven, more passionate, but they just didn't get the same breaks in life, And so simply because they went to University of Massachusetts, they had a very different opportunities than I did. And so that always stuck with me. And then, in college, like I said, I studied physics and economics. I had no idea. I did do computer science as well, but I didn't, I was honestly scared of finance because I came from a former communist country, and I didn't really understand. I didn't really understand capitalism, if I'm being frank. And it was intimidating. And what ended up happening was after college, I ended up in Silicon Valley. My first job was at a tech company, at Google pre-IPO, and I went to work for a couple of other companies before starting my own innovation consultancy. But at some point after 10 years of working in Silicon Valley, I just got really, really fed up with it. I got really fed up with kind of the homogeneity of the innovations that were happening there. So it was all I thought, innovations that were for really elite people, notwithstanding the race and, gender biases, but, there were just not innovations that most of the people that I knew would find useful. And so then, that kind of experience, that, being fed up with being in this bubble and also my background as a kid kind of merged. And, we started looking around at other emerging tech hubs and quickly realized that there were really amazing innovators building massive, impactful, and useful to the majority of society products and businesses. And the other thing that was really striking about that was that, these innovators were much more diverse in every sense than the people that I met in Silicon Valley. Not only gender-wise, not only ethnically, but also socioeconomically, more diverse in terms of their educational background, their work experience. but yet they were building really, really amazing tech companies. And so that really led to BetaBoom. You know, my professional experience was leading innovation and building innovation teams and helping innovation teams innovate better. So I was really great at that. And yeah, and we just thought, you know, we saw an opportunity. My wife, who is my partner and my boss, we saw an opportunity, and you know, that they're awesome innovators, and what they needed a little bit of help with is bridging that gap to expertise, to helping them find product market fit, helping them find scalable marketing channels. And we said, you know, this is what we've been doing for more than a decade, our entire career, so we're perfect for the part. And we sold everything in Bay Area, moved to Utah to start BetaBoom, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's a really phenomenal story. I love how you kind of took us from the beginning of when you came and like how that kind of rolled over into how you started BetaBoom. I'm curious to know. I feel something you didn't mention was Atma Connect.
Yeah.
I was looking at your background and I felt like you had to have taken a lot of lessons from founding Atma and applied them to BetaBoom. So if you could just talk a little bit about that and about like some of the lessons that you learned that you're now applying to BetaBoom, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure. So I think like, you know, first of all, one thing that is a real benefit in my experience is that I was a failed entrepreneur many times over. I was a wantrepreneur. You know, I started probably like 7 different things before I reached any kind of success with Atma, to, you know, to varying degrees of success. Those other 7 failures, some was, you know, like I quit mid building the product. Some we built the product but never gained traction. But Atma was really the first experience where, you know, I, as a founder, as a co-founder, had built something from the ground up. And, you know, we built the product and we gained traction, we gained a bunch of users, and it was great. Like you know, Atma is still around. It has served millions of people, mostly in Indonesia, where it is based. But you know, like I remember there was one story that was very poignant. There were floods in Indonesia. Maybe now it's about 5 years ago or 4 years ago. And even before people were talking about it on Twitter or Facebook, people on our platform on Atma were warning others about the floods, giving them information about what areas to avoid, what to do. And I just thought to myself, man, you know, like we did it. We made something that was like truly useful, truly used by people. And you know, like what that experience really taught me was how to overcome, you know, failure, and how to like persevere and get to that point where there's like a tipping point in startups. You know, there are actually many tipping points, but that's the first one, is when you actually like build something and you get like a significant number of people to use it. And then, you know, so I reached that, and that was really important, because now I know how to get there. You know, like once you've gotten somewhere, you can pretty much guide somebody there again. But I also, like, through my, you know, through all the times that I didn't get there, I learned what were the hangups. You know, like why did I quit at that point? What was it that, you know, that didn't work out, or the bad decisions that I made? So Atma was very formative. And then the other thing that Atma did was it kind of allowed me to become a mentor for Berkeley's Big Ideas competition. It's a social innovation competition. And in the process of being a mentor to, you know, to the innovation teams, to the students, I just fell in love with working with other, you know, innovators. And I was really good at it. I realized, you know, I was really good at kind of helping them to break down the problems and really trying to empower them rather than telling them they should do this or that or the other. And you know, that I think was that made me think a lot bigger than myself. You know, when I did Atma, I remember like there was a time when I thought to myself, you know, this is awesome, but like I alone can only have a certain impact. But there are lots of entrepreneurs out there that are much better than I am. So if I'm able to enable, you know, if I can enable them, then they can, you know, reach a lot more people than I can do on my own. And so that, you know, once again, like it's all these threads that I never thought would, I never imagined they would come together in these ways. But that's really what that was a very significant part of, opening this opportunity and leading to Beta Boom. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love like the fact that like your story is just like so interconnected, right? Like you said that you came in, to like a lower income community, and you talked a little bit about that. And Atma was a social network that was kind of helping serve other low income communities. And now, with Beta Boom, again, you guys have been running it for several years now, and maybe talk about like the initial journey of founding Beta Boom and like how you were able to succeed these goals of coaching more innovators and kind of, I guess, bringing this more diverse mindset and these diverse individuals into the venture capital fold, where, as we know, we've covered on Startup Society, only 2% of venture capital funding go to Black founders, for example, and then obviously if you cut it deeper, that gets less and less. So maybe just talking a little bit about that and how did Beta Boom actually form together with the team that it did, and kind of what are the main goals, beyond what we talked about.
Yeah, for sure. So I think that the biggest kind of revelation for us was, first of all, when most of my career was doing user-centered product development, so really understanding the needs of users and building products and services around them. And the first thing that struck me about the venture capital space, even accelerators, was that these are things that haven't evolved. Venture capital hasn't evolved since like the late 1800s, which to me is like this is just like insanity, right? Because it's a service, it's a product, right, for entrepreneurs to be able to build their products, of course, for the investors as well. But it's something that hasn't really materially evolved in over a century and a half, right? And the innovators have changed drastically, back in especially like when VC gained prominence in the 50s and 60s in Silicon Valley, it was mostly white dudes from with PhDs from MIT and Stanford that had, first of all, they were working on different kinds of innovations. They were very like leading edge fundamental innovations. But they also had very different backgrounds. They had very different access to alumni networks, to expertise. A lot of them had a lot of experience with entrepreneurship, through their school or through professional experience. And so now you have these innovators that have like a completely different profile. So the first thing that we thought about was, let's throw everything out the door and let's think about like how can we use kind of the underlying venture capital model, but then really tailor it to the needs and the strengths of this new wave of innovators. And so, so when we founded Beta Boom, it really started from kind of a blank sheet of paper, and we just like any like good startup, what we did was we experimented a lot. We had the good fortune that we had a little bit of our own capital that we could use to kind of seed Beta Boom and to have that ability to experiment, but we really tried everything. We started out as an accelerator. We realized really quickly that the accelerator model was flawed for many reasons in terms of really unlocking the potential of the founders that we were serving. And so we really tried a lot of different stuff. The thing that never changed, the thing that we started out with was that these founders, like they're amazing, they're brilliant, they know their problem better than anybody else, they're super resilient, but usually a lot of the founders that we're talking to, they didn't have the same access to expertise, to operational expertise. So me having spent most of my career in Silicon Valley, if I need like an SEO expert, I can call one up. Or if I need like a Facebook ads expert or a user experience designer, whereas founders that, for example, like never worked for a tech company and live in like Kansas City, they may not have the same access to those experts and to that knowledge. So the first thing that we realized is that we need to work a lot more hands-on with our founders initially to bridge that gap. to either build their internal knowledge or to connect them with experts that can be a part of their team, either as advisors, team members, consultants, what have you. So, so basically, just to kind of bring it all back, I think, the first thing that is really important was just that we really, really wanted to innovate, and we really experimented a lot when we founded BetaBoom in 2018. But honestly, like on the practical side, when we did something that probably I would say was foolhardy, in the sense that we just jumped into it. We, like we said, we see this opportunity. We think we're perfect for the part. We think, we have some ideas about, opportunities that other funds and accelerators are meeting. But we probably should have done a little bit more research before we like really, sold our house and moved to Utah and started everything. But in a way, like maybe, like when I look back at it, like I'm also thinking that maybe it was a good thing, because we sometimes, like, people get stuck because they overthink things, and also the fact that we had sacrificed so much was such a driver for us to just keep going. Just, we're a startup in a sense as well, because we're a new fund. We're trying a very different model than most of VC, most accelerators. And we have low points. There are points where we doubt ourselves. There are points where, stuff didn't work out the same way. And so, given that we had given up so much, this seemingly perfect life in Silicon Valley to do this thing is a huge driver for us to just keep going. And so yeah, I mean, like, honestly, it was I think if I were to sum it up, it was just really thinking outside the box, really kind of, taking on that innovative and experimentational spirit. And then we just kind of went for it. There were a lot of things about how venture capital works that we didn't know back then. And, there are probably a lot of things that we still need to learn. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers, if I did a good job answering your question, but that's kind of how it happened. It was
No, you definitely did. And just to comment, like I love the fact that you guys kind of jumped into it. I think they say that it's easy to fail when you have a safety net, but you kind of prevent yourself from failing if you have nothing to kind of fall on.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that's true. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Sergio, a lot of our listeners are also aspiring entrepreneurs, people in the early stages of maybe working on an idea. I know BetaBoom, you guys are investing equity into pre-seed startups. What exactly are you looking for when you're making these investments? I guess, what is your kind of criteria? Are you investing more in a grand vision, a product, or is it the people, the team, maybe a mixture of both? Maybe you could walk us through the investment philosophy, criteria, that kind of evaluation process.
Yeah, for sure. So once again, like, we're very contrarian to what most of venture capital does. First of all, like, one thing that I'll say right off the bat is that the majority of venture capital funds, they invest in pedigree. So they invest in founders that come from top 10 schools, that have worked for big name brand companies like Google or McKinsey. And, what we found actually is that even within diversity focused funds, they vastly over-index on like the ultra high pedigree founders. And what we found was that, and there's plenty of data that supports this, is that pedigree has very little, if zero, correlation with startup success. And so we look beyond that. We don't care where you went to school. We don't care where you worked. What we really, really focus on is how well you know your customer and how well you know your problem space. We love founders that have lived their problem, but at least have a really, really amazingly detailed insight into their customers. We love founders that have a lot of passion and perseverance, that have shown a history of grit, because the startup journey, is probably one of the hardest things that you can do. Like, along with like the Ironman and becoming a Navy SEAL, becoming a successful entrepreneur is up there in terms of the kind of grit you need. So we love founders that are really gritty. We love founders that come from, challenging backgrounds, because it shows us that they can overcome that and become successful. We also love founders that are super focused on what they're doing. So you know, if they're working on like 4 different things at one time, it's usually a red flag for us. We love founders that are like obsessed with whatever they're working on. And the last thing that we really focus on is just like, how well do they get stuff done? You know, we focus on execution, and part of our evaluation process is actually putting them through, you know, through the ringer and seeing, you know, how well do you actually like, you know, set milestones and meet them. And, you know, once again, like my experience is that even, you know, like it doesn't matter what diploma you have, like some founders like with the best pedigree just like are terrible at execution. And on the other hand, you know, some founders that don't even have a college degree are just amazing entrepreneurs. And so, and by the way, like all of this stuff has proven out in the professional world, you know, so like Apple doesn't even care if you have a diploma anymore. Google doesn't care whether you graduated from top schools. Amazon doesn't either, you know, so we 100% think the same thing is gonna, it's even more true, I think, in entrepreneurship. So that's who we look for. We look for those kinds of founders. We look for startups that are serving women and the rising majority particularly. You know, that doesn't have to be your only customer, but if you're doing a particularly good job serving the needs of those groups, then we really like that, because we see that that's where the economy is going. And we only invest in software because, you know, my partners and I, that is where we spend 90% of our careers. We're super good at working with software companies. We really get that. And that's where we can deliver the most value as investors. And so that's, you know, that's typically who we look for. And once again, pre-seed as well. So sometimes, you know, startups apply to us when they're like raising their Series A or a 12, you know, or a $20 million seed. So we're way too early for those kind of startups.
Got it. No, that was great to hear. It was actually refreshing to hear, because there's just so much credentialism in this space, in venture capital and
yeah, I mean,
finance in general.
That's such a, you know, crappy school. It's an amazing entrepreneurial school, right? But, you know, like probably like a Babson, you know, graduate compared to a Stanford grad, like you guys don't get the same look, but you should be getting better looks, honestly, because you guys are an amazing entrepreneurial school. So, but yeah, anyway, sorry.
No, exactly. You hit on it. Well, we want to be respectful of your time, Sergio. This was a great discussion. Last question I have, I'll bring it back to the beginning here. You know, you mentioned a little bit of your immigrant story, coming here at a very young age. RUMEER and I are both first-generation immigrants. My parents came here from Iran, RUMEER from India. I'd be curious to hear, you know, I'd say for myself, being able to talk to my ancestors about their unique upbringing outside of the country has given me a unique perspective of navigating life here in America. It's given me some valuable lessons. I'm curious if you've had a similar experience with anything about, you know, your home country or your family out there has given you any kind of unique perspective that you'd say would has helped you here and helped you become successful.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think so. I'm an immigrant, you know, I think, to be honest, so 2 things. One, I think actually going through the immigrant experience, even as a first generation immigrant, you know, one thing that I think I really, really love about immigrants is that usually they have a lot of hardship that they have to deal with, you know. So when we moved to this country, we lost all of our safety nets. We really only had one family member that could, you know, that could help us out in any way. All of our friends, my parents had to start their careers from, you know, from the ground up, different careers. So just overcoming that, I think, gives, first of all, builds incredible resilience. And second of all, I have to say that for me personally, it's giving me a ton of confidence, you know. So for me to sell our house in Oakland and to move to Utah, you know, that seems kind of like a big jump for most people. For me, it's like, whatever, you know, like I gave up my entire life and like every single possession. Like we came to this country with 2 suitcases and we made it work. So like, you know, like we're well educated. I have
been there, done that.
Yeah, been there, done that, you know. So it actually helps, like it builds a lot of confidence, I think. So I love that immigrants are, for the most part, really, really resilient, very confident. But the other thing that I think is really amazing is that when you bring people from different cultures and you bring different backgrounds, you know, together in any context, even if it's, you know, Americans, you know, 6th generation Americans, but if you bring people that are from different cultures, different backgrounds, that's when innovation happens. And once again, this is like scientifically proven. In the scientific world, the best innovators, the professors and researchers that have the most cited studies are the ones that work with professors in other fields. So the same exact thing happens in innovation. Like the more experiences that you can bring together, the more innovative that you can be as a company. So I love and that's why we're so bullish on investing in like a truly diverse set of founders, is because when we bring them all together, we know that magic is going to happen. So I think those are like the two big things, I think, benefits of being an immigrant.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Well, Sergio, we really enjoyed this conversation. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, guys. It was really fun.